Higher Education Committee to order. I want to ask Senator Hickman if you would have the invocation for us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. Oh, gracious Heavenly Father, what a wonderful day you've given us, Lord. You've given us a day that we have to honor you, Lord. We ask you to through these deliberations and hearings today, Heavenly Father, that we find ways to honor you and better serve our Georgia citizens. Please bless us in your name we pray. Amen.
Okay, first on our agenda today, House Bill 617 by Chairman Martin, the distinguished chair of the House Higher Ed Committee. Whichever way you can either sit or stand, whichever.
I'll sit.
That's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I'm number 11. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you can hear me through this.
Yes, sir. I'll cut it up a little bit. Go ahead.
Is it better to have it off? Yeah, I'll do that. Sometimes they tell me it's better to keep it on. I have a face for radio, so they keep it covered up.
If you would just pull that mic closer,
Yes,
I think
sir.
it'll pick you up better.
There you go. I have before you, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee for hearing me this afternoon. We have House Bill 617. That comes to you by committee substitute from the House, LC 490503S. The substitute was just to remove the effective date. It was going to be effective originally, I think, January 2022, and we changed that to be effective on signature. This measure was referred to as name, image, likeness. As we all know, there's been discussion for a number of years about our student athletes and post-secondary institutions, both at public and private, getting compensated for their name, image, likeness. There exist rules in the NCAA and NAI where if one does that, they're ineligible, and there's been litigation filed, I think, by a number of states toward those organizations. And at some point, they're going to come to a decision of can these student athletes be compensated and how. What this bill seeks to do is to put some things into law, to put some form around it, should that be settled nationally and at the federal level. Real quickly, it just defines in the definitions who it applies to. Our university system, technical college system, and independent private colleges. The important piece is that it notes that there's a safe harbor on the compensation they receive for their name, image, likeness, where it has to come from, and that's on line 42 and 43. They point out that their scholarship is not compensation. We've been worried for years that somebody at the IRS was going to get a little overzealous, and if they said, okay, we're paying you for your name, image, likeness, then your scholarship's worth this much, and it was going to turn into a 1099 or W-2able type thing. So we put that in our law that we don't see that as compensation. We ask that the student athlete make their agreement with someone that's going to pay them public and disclose any conflict with the agreement that the university has. And this is all a bit nebulous, to be honest, because none of these agreements exist today, because this cannot happen today. This is just to put a straw man in place should it be decided at the national level so our student athletes can avail themselves of it. It talks about on lines, starting on the third page, lines. Well, if I give you exact line number, I'm going to probably be one or two off because I'm working from a marked up copy. But it just talks about the education they need to receive. That the institutions need to give them education about what this means to them financially and what the business looks like. And the workshop doesn't need to include marketing or advertising or referral service to any agents. It talks about who can't be involved in doing that. So the institution itself can't be an intermediary. It has on lines 83 through 90, it's basically telling the NCAA, or I keep using the NCAA, an intercollegiate athletic association, that if they receive compensation, they can't declare the athlete ineligible nor the institution that the athlete works at ineligible. Obviously, that's to be decided by an administrative court or a court of law. So really what we have here is something that just we put in place in law so that our student athletes and our athletic programs at our intercollegiate institutions are on a level playing field, pardon the pun, with other states should this be decided at a national level. We received bipartisan support in the House. It passed 171-0.
Okay, we do have some questions.
Sit for
Senator
questions.
Beach?
Could you talk to us a little bit about 96 through 98, talking about sports agents and how an agent would represent these athletes and what that looks like?
Yeah, well, I mean, what that ultimately will look like will probably be decided when it's done at the federal level. But what those agents would have to be is they would have to have the same licensure that you have to when you get an agent after you become eligible. Whether it be if you declare for the pros as a junior out of college, or when you're after your third year in baseball, I believe it is, in various. So the agents to operate as a sports agent in Georgia, you have to be licensed in Title 43. So those agents would have to be licensed under that same thing. What we want to do in this legislation is protect these student athletes from some folks that would be unscrupulous to come in and take advantage of them, because these may be young men and young ladies that are doing this, just that sometimes 17, 18, 19, as opposed to 21, 22, 23 when they're getting out of college. So they would have to have the same licensure that we would require now when they go out of college.
Okay, I think Senator Hickman was next, and then Senator Orrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Representative Martin, what's the stance on NCAA on this? I mean, it looks to me like we'd be looking for them for guidance as to what needs to be done, and then they would probably be working with Congress or some higher body on this instead of our particular state. And I know you told me earlier that several states have already looked into this, and California being one of those. And we typically look to not follow what California normally does. But tell me what the NCAA's position on this is.
Well, first, Senator, let me agree with you, and we don't necessarily want to pattern our legislative policy after California. And I didn't mean to state we were doing so. What I meant to say was that California is actually one of the states that is litigating with, I think, some of the intercollegiate athletic associations about this, because it became prominent, on the West Coast before about the compensation. And so you're absolutely right. Ultimately, this is going to be decided, because whether we say in state law that the NCAA can't declare a player ineligible if they get name, image, likeness money, the truth is we don't have direct authority in the state of Georgia over the NCAA. They're a private organization and governed by laws. Probably, I'm several semesters shy of a constitutional law degree, but they're probably governed by things up to and including the Interstate Commerce Clause and so forth. So what this is just trying to do is to put a straw man in place. It's really the first time in my years down here that I've brought you a bill and asked you to pass it, knowing that when the NCAA acts, and they act at the national level, we will need to come back and refine this to align, much like we do in our what am I saying? RC, the tax update. The tax update every year to match. We'll need to update our code. But this just allows the student athletes that are entertaining coming to Georgia institutions in the future, that they will be able to be treated equally, and we will not be at a disadvantage because let's be honest, it's a competitive game out there to get collegiate athletes. And if somebody in the state of Florida or the state of Alabama, to name two that we compete with, can say to a student athlete, hey, if the NCAA passes this and you sell jersey numbers and so forth, you're going to be able to get paid in Florida. In Georgia, you can't. It puts our institutions at a disadvantage. Now, I personally hate to see this happen, in college sports, but I lean on people in the NCAA. President Moorhead, I believe, is on the board of directors at the NCAA, and I lean on the good offices that those men and women have to come up with a way to do this that will be fair and in the best interest of the student athlete. And we just want to have Georgia law ready to intertwine with that.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Got Senator Orrick. Let me ask this. Is the sound okay for everybody in here? Can you hear it? Okay. Just want to make sure.
To the House Chair of Higher Ed. Good to have you. A part of the bill that you didn't particularly highlight, but I think has great merit and would be applicable with passage of the bill was that paragraph E on page 4 that says a post-secondary educational institution shall conduct a financial literacy and life skills workshop for a minimum of 5 hours at the beginning of the student-athlete's first and third academic years. That seems to be incredibly worthwhile to put in place to equip more of these young athletes with this skill set that they're going to need throughout their careers, and that ought to be getting their arms around right now. I think that's an excellent piece to a bill that has great merit.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I did mention that. I didn't go into that depth. I thank you for bringing that up. And I believe our larger institutions provide that today. There has been, to be honest, I always like to tell you the good and the bad and the maybe on the bill. One of the comments we got back from some of our smaller institutions is how would they pay for that? And I have had conversations with the larger institutions, and they feel good about sharing that content with our smaller institutions. I mean, at that point, it's not a competition. It's helping our young student athletes be ready for the financial. We don't want them to be taken advantage of.
Exactly.
We don't want that. But thank you for highlighting that. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Senator Jordan, what number are you? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Specifically, I have a question with respect to line 50 through 52. And I appreciate you bringing this legislation. I think that it's needed. My only concern here is specifically says that a student athlete can enter into one of these contracts as long as it doesn't, if the provision of such contract doesn't basically conflict with the student athlete's team contract. Could a institution try to get around the ability of the athlete to benefit from this bill by putting into the team contract some kind of language that would preclude them from doing that?
Well, I have to give you a non-lawyer answer to that. I mean, if you will, I don't know. When you ask could they, I'm sure legally one could put something in the contract to do that. That is not what that is in place for. That is in place without using brand names, because I don't give anybody a free commercial here. That is if the institution has a contract with Tennis Shoemaker A, and that would preclude that athlete from doing a name, image, likeness with a competing tennis shoe brand, for instance. I mean, I knew my son played baseball at the University of Georgia, and they were under contract with a particular maker of baseball gear, and one of them had a big logo on the baseball glove and the mitt thing, and the pitcher really liked to use that, but it wasn't the brand. I mean, he wasn't getting paid for it. It's just you couldn't have that. So they blacked it out. They just colored it in, and you find some of that. So to answer your question as directly as I can, given that there is no team contract now because it hasn't been approved by the NCAA, is that is trying to keep, if the team's wearing this kind of gear, we've all seen the logos on the jerseys, right? And the athlete has a deal with somebody else. That's what they're trying to avoid the conflict. In your specific example, I think if a university were to try to write in their contract, hey, athletes, you can't get paid for this, don't think they'd get a lot of good athletes. I think it would be disadvantageous to the university to do that. I think if this gets put into place, it would be to the university's advantage to work with their student athletes, and I hope they work with them in such a way so there's not a great gap between the star running back and the blocking back, because that's what I see as something that could provide some angst on the team if the running back goes for 200 yards a game for a year, and they're getting a lot for their name, image, likeness, and the folks over here are blocking, and they're not getting anything. That's going to be really hard for the coaches to manage, and I'll leave that in their good offices. Again, I don't think this is the best thing that could happen to college sports, but it is happening, and we have to prepare so our student athletes.
And so just one follow-up with respect to that. My only probably suggestion then is to define the term team contract, because it sounds like you're talking about a very specific, almost like a term of art, right? Like you're talking about a very specific thing with kind of under the NCAA, not just generally just a contract.
Yeah, it's
So-
not the contract with the player to play. And I hear what you're saying. I'm not trying to avoid the question. That's part of what I mentioned before, for me to bring you a bill to not know. I think if the NCAA, if this moves forward and they approve it nationwide, there will be a term of art for what that team contract is, and we'll probably have to come back and recognize this, like in our, keep getting
Yeah.
it blank, the update.
The IRS
The tax,
update.
yeah, IRC update. You'd think on Ways and Means for that number of years. We'll have to do it, but the point is well taken. If I may, just a personal privilege to the senator, you probably got a lot of things yesterday afternoon about me trying to create a city in your district over there. And just for the record, I have no idea what that fellow was talking about.
Representative, I would never think that you would do that to my district.
Just, when they were saying Buckhead, I thought it was down there where Captain Belton lives.
I know.
Man, it's amazing the things that we do around here when we don't know anything about it, isn't it?
Well, I appreciate that, so I expect that I won't ever see that coming from you, so.
Yeah, I'm not for it or against it. I just can tell you that it was never going on House Bill 459.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? We have two people signed up to speak to the bill, Jeff Jackson and Paula Gillespie from GISA. If you're in the hall, please come in.
They would speak to mine 606.
Okay, sorry. Excuse me, wrong bill. Okay, wrong bill, I'm sorry. Okay, if there are any other questions, comments? We're doing these four bills hearing only today, and, pardon?
That's right.
If you have any issues, work it out with Chairman Martin, and we'll
Yes,
be
ma'am.
in
And
good shape.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, if Senator Jordan, if you have some suggested language of that, I'm all for it. I just don't know how I'd define that term of art when we don't know where it'll come back
Yeah.
from the NCAA.
No, I appreciate it, because the way I was reading it, I was just kind of doing a plain
Sure.
English reading of it.
Right.
And that's where I was getting tripped up. Once you explained to me what a team contract was, it's a very specific thing.
Yes, ma'am.
So I could just imagine other people.
Yeah,
Getting-
I'm 100% sure that should we get favorable consideration here and this becomes law, that if and after, there's something adopted nationwide, we'll be back to update it to make it actually work for our student athletes. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And let
Thank
me
you,
know if
Mr.
I can help
Chairman.
you with anything.
Yes, sir, thank you. Second bill before us today, House Bill 152, Representative Wiedauer, the 119th. Yes, sir, that'll be fine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Here with LC 490370S, House Bill 152. This is an agency bill for the Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission. A couple years ago, they had a new director. He's been trying to update some of their methodologies for the last couple of years, and we are finally now here in front of you. This has 4 sections, and I'll walk through them quickly. The first one deals with these schools that are located on military bases. There's actually 17 of them in the state of Georgia, and they have problems accessing them, obviously security reasons, what have you. What this does is, because those schools are also looked after by the federal government, this would take them out of their purview, eliminate the need for them to go onto these bases, and let the federal government oversee those 17 colleges. That's what Section 1 does. Section
Let me ask you a
2.
question while you're on Section 1.
Yes, sir.
I see that it strikes, originally, the existing language has for military personnel stationed on active duty at such military installations, their dependents are the Department of or DOD employees and other civilian employees of that installation. That's being removed, so are we opening up military bases to civilians coming on the base taking these courses?
Thank you for pointing that out, and I did miss that. So what that is these schools, say they're about 50 seats. If they fill them with 48 military personnel that are on these bases or dependents or what have you, and they leave 2 seats open, they actually lose federal funding. So what they're doing is they merely are, if there is a seat available, they do offer it up to a member of the public surrounding that base should they want to choose to go to that school there.
Would
So
the
this
public have security clearance to be on the base and admittance privileges?
they would have to go through the typical process of securing identification and validation for them to be able to enter that base for that purpose.
I don't know much about the requirements of that, but I mean, has the military blessed this?
Oh, yes, sir. I mean, this is,
So they
that's
don't
what they're
have a
doing. That
problem
says,
with civilians coming on base on a
no, they
regular
welcome
basis?
that, again,
Pardon?
because if they welcome that in these situations when they need to fill seats, because otherwise the funding would be pulled and then they would not be able to offer that service to military personnel that are stationed on those bases.
Okay. Senator Payne, you got any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to say that most of the larger military bases in Georgia, in our state, are open bases. So they're not, so therefore the public is allowed to go on just anytime they feel free to.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
carry on, thank you.
No problem. Section 2 is merely a cleanup. There were some sections in years past that got deleted and were left blanks. That's just simply renumbering. You see there on line 25. Nothing changes other than just the numbers. Section 3, these schools, there is approximately just under 800 of these schools across the state of Georgia. Obviously, what we've seen what's happened this last year, and also in efforts of saving the department money. What this does is, say you have a school that has been reviewed year after year after year, and they have a long-standing track record. That provision right there, lines 49 through 53, would simply allow the director the discretion to say, we're going to review that school remotely and not actually have to physically step foot into that facility. That's what lines 49 through 53 would give the director that ability. Section 4, since some of these schools have gotten larger and their student population has gotten larger, we are adding on lines 88 through 90 2 tiers for the appropriate bond amounts to ensure that these schools are carrying appropriate bonds to protect the tuition of the schools, of the students that are attending these schools. That is it. And I certainly will have any questions. The director did sign up in case you guys have questions for him directly, but doesn't care to speak if you don't.
If you would clarify for me the term executive director, that is the executive director of which organization? Is
Of the
this school?
of the non-public post-secondary education commission. That's Kirk Shook, and he is here if you'd like to ask him any questions directly.
So who does the inspection?
They have, I believe there are 4 individuals. They have 2 of them are outside. Kirk does some of them, but each one of them takes a separate group of these. Some of them are exempt from certain things. That lady is actually outside. She does some of those inspections, but they platoon it depending on what the schools are doing.
Has there been a problem with them not having sole discretion?
No, again, that just allows him to potentially do it remotely instead of having to go physically do it. That's what that provision is for.
Okay, any other questions of the committee? Okay, I think we have Kirk Shook signed up to speak on House Bill
Would you?
156.
He's fine not, but if there are people that would like to ask him questions, he's happy to come in and answer.
Any questions on the bill? There doesn't appear to be any questions.
All right. Thank you very
so
much. Appreciate it.
Next bill we have is House Bill 291. Representative Dempsey.
Thank you. If it's okay, I will do like 10 or like
That's fine. Let me, you on 10 or 11?
10.
to 10.
Great. Is that better, or?
That's good.
No? Okay,
If you would pull the mic just a little bit closer.
I will. I will do that. Is that better?
That's much
Maybe?
better.
Good, good. Okay, so 291, even before COVID, we were quite aware that there was a healthcare workforce shortage in Georgia. And so this bill is to address that. The intent of the legislation is to, using a narrow and targeted amendment to the Georgia Tuition Equalization Grant Program, expand the pool of quality nurses and address the healthcare workforce shortage. Tuition equalization grants encourage Georgia residents to attend eligible private colleges and universities in Georgia by providing assistance toward their educational costs if they meet the eligibility requirements. It will be $317 per quarter or $475 per semester, up to 4 quarters or 3 semesters per year. In 2011, we passed and the governor signed an update to the tuition equalization grant program, changing the eligibility criteria for private colleges and universities in qualifying for the grant. Specifically, it grandfathered in all of the 34 existing eligible institutions, but made it very difficult, almost impossible, for new institutions to qualify. So what this will do is, through a very tight process, allow for this expansion focused on nursing particularly. If you look at the bill, which is LC 490472S, the changes begin at line 53. And they are very specific. On line 55, it is for a baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing. In 56, they must be accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools or by the Higher Learning Commission, which is accredited by the Commission on Collegiate Nursing Education and which has a National Council licensure examination 4-year average passage rate of at least 85%. So very performance-driven. Down on line 67, it also discusses that provided, however, that only the institution's baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing shall be deemed an approved school for the purpose of this subpart. So it's very focused on nursing particularly.
Okay. Any questions that the committee may have? Senator Orrock?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the author, the very last comment you made about how tightly it's focused on the nursing, is it accurate to say that only the institution's baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing shall be deemed an approved school?
For
Is that-
this,
for purposes of this bill, does that mean that, so that means the institution has to have a baccalaureate degree program
it does. And
or a program in nursing? Well, so don't they all offer baccalaureate degree programs?
not all in nursing, and this is nursing-specific focused. Of the 34 schools that are there, several, most do probably, have, but also have other programs as well. This is truly targeted at this time to particularly, I would say, not only expand nurses in our state, but also to balance the reality of the costs.
Well, my question, I guess, is you described it as narrow, but if it's every school that offers a baccalaureate degree, how many of them don't offer baccalaureate degrees? It seemed to
Well-
be virtually all of them, unless I don't know as much as I think I do about the proprietary schools.
Some don't. Some don't, actually. I mean, there are other public and private institutions that do not have nursing or medical. They're focused on other.
But they have baccalaureate degree. That's what I'm pointing to. That's what
Well, it's a
opens the-
baccalaureate degree institution with a baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing.
No, it's or. Only the institution's baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing shall be deemed an approved school. So any school it doesn't, whether it has nursing or not, if it has a baccalaureate degree program, it's approved by the language.
If you
as
go
I
on
read
and
it.
look down in line 57, as I read that, though, it is accredited by the Commission on Collegiate Nursing Education. So it is focused specifically to increase nursing capacity.
But you see, on line 55, you've got, those three lines, a qualified proprietary institution of higher education located in the state, which is a baccalaureate degree granting institution of higher education, offering a baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing.
The baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing.
That's right. So
it is
the
in
baccalaureate
nursing.
degree program takes in everybody, whether they have nursing there or not.
I think the intent of the language is for nursing.
But on the page as it reads, it has or.
Well,
No, it says it says or of higher education offering a baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing. So it takes in all that have a program in nursing, but it also takes in all that have a baccalaureate degree program, whether or not they do nursing or not.
I don't believe that was the intent. It's not the way I'm reading it, but I understand the way you're reading it.
Yeah, it's absolute. I mean, I don't know any other way to understand that language than that it both for baccalaureate degree programs or programs in nursing. And the question, what page, line 55, that paragraph, what, double I?
Right?
And so that may be something we look at, before the next time we meet, but because this language, as it appears on this page, would call these institutions qualified if they offer a baccalaureate degree program or programs in nursing. So then the question becomes, how broad is this, and it looks like we're opening a barn door instead of the eye of a needle.
Senator O'Rourke, I just wonder if maybe the crafting of this would refer, you may have an institution that may offer several degrees or a singular degree. It says degree or degrees. Am I reading it correctly?
I don't have the numbers in
Excuse me, a
front of me.
baccalaureate
Yeah.
degree program or programs, which would mean that you may have a singular program or you may have multiple programs at the same institution in the area of nursing.
It's a very good question that some more of a legal scholar than I am would have to.
Well, I'm not a legal scholar, but we're
Neither
not
one
going
of
to
us
take
are.
action on the bill today. We'll clarify. Senator
Yeah.
Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just a question. First of all, I agree with Senator Orick. I think the language is confusing. I like the fact that what we really would like to see is a baccalaureate degree program in nursing that is accredited, either by SACS or by the Higher Learning Commission. And I like the specific passage rate. 85% is good. I've had universities and schools under my administration that had nursing programs. I am concerned about line 59, and you exclude certain institutions. And my question is why, if they meet the criteria of accreditation and offer baccalaureate degrees in nursing?
Are you talking about the?
Not a Bible school or
Right.
college.
So that is in the underlying bill, actually.
Well-
This mirrors exactly what is in
But that
the
seems to
bill.
be new language.
It's new language for this part because we're adding this section with the double I's, but it mirrors exactly the language that is in the original underlying bill for the tuition equalization grant schools.
Let's
that exist today.
take Mercer University as an example. A traditionally Methodist institution that has quality programs, baccalaureate programs in nursing.
So they're already qualified.
Again, but what if another institution like that, let's say Bruton Parker, let's say Reinhardt.
Bruton
let's-
Parker's already.
I understand, but my point is you're eliminating certain institutions that may qualify.
We're not, because
Senator-
they've already qualified. They came in with this legislation in 2011. All 34 of those schools were let in. There is one, possibly two more schools that have developed and have established and have bricks and mortar since this legislation, and they cannot add on as it is written. So this is to help them also level the playing field and allow those nurses to receive tuition equalization.
I'm all about nurses. I'm all about nursing education, and I'm all about quality nursing education. I just don't want to inadvertently exclude an institution
Right.
because you have labeled them Bible school or
I didn't label them. It's in the original legislation that I was not a part of. So it is mirroring that exact same. It would require going back and adding more and changing the whole underlying bill as well.
Senator Burns, Chairman Burns, I think what Representative Dempsey is referring to is on line 38 through 40. I had the same question. I don't really care whether it's a Bible institution or not. If they offer an accredited nursing program, they ought to be approved. I don't know why we exempt, I don't know why we cut them out just because they're a Bible institution. They're not teaching theology. It's not an accredited theology course that you're talking about. It's an accredited nursing course. If they have an accredited nursing course, I don't see why they don't qualify if we're in a shortage of nurses. I think we ought to look at probably the underlying language. I don't know what other parts of the code that this may be in, but since we're just having a hearing only, I think it's worthy. If there's a legitimate reason why the carve-out is on line 38 through 40 and is also mirrored on lines 58, 59, and 60. We may want to look at that and edit in the bill. And Representative Dempsey, I'll be glad to get with you on that. Or Senator Chairman Burns, would you be willing to look at that? You've got extensive history in higher ed.
be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be happy to work, Representative.
Certainly. Yeah, I think when you look at the existing schools and realize what happened at that time, the historical perspective on this, they are not, like, Emory is not a Bible college, but it teaches Bible. It's not a, is that correct? Am I not? It's not a Bible college that has added on nursing. It is a, so that, I think that's the language that was there at
Mr.
that
Chairman, if
time.
I may, I agree with you, but I will say if you have SACS accreditation or Higher Education Commission accreditation for a nursing program, your status as a quote-unquote Bible institution is not relevant to nursing education if you're accredited.
I understand what you're saying, and all I know to say to it is that it is exactly as it was in the 2011 legislation. So that's why it is written that way.
Thank you.
This is what Legislative Council felt had to be in there. But I'm open to anything that y'all think can help do it. Dr. Sean Little is also here, the president of Atlanta Chamberlain University of Nursing, which this particularly impacts, and is willing to speak to the measure if you would
That's fine.
like to hear.
If Sean Little would come in, please. Sean Little.
Hi, thank you.
If you would introduce yourself and the organization you represent.
Yes, sir. My name is Dr. Sean Little. I'm the campus president for Chamberlain University School of Nursing.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you, Chair and Committee. I wanted to come in and support Bill 291, House Bill 291. I've been teaching in nursing since 2006, and the great thing about nursing right now, as you guys know, is we're fighting in the middle of a pandemic. And according to the Georgia Nurses Association, by 2030, we're going to be about 2,000 nurses short. That was prior to the pandemic. There's a lot of evidence right now of nurses leaving the profession that were close to retirement because of the pandemic and burnout. Excuse me. So what we're looking to do now is to really try to make sure that we have a nurse workforce within the state. Because if we don't, we're going to be at critical capacity within our state, and we're not going to be able to provide health care. So what we're asking with this bill is to afford the opportunity to some students within the state that don't currently have the opportunity to get a tuition equalization grant. Right now, our students within Chamberlain, we don't have a wait list. We are one of the largest producer of nurses within the state, according to the Georgia Board of Nursing for the last 3 years. I don't know about 2020 because we don't have that data yet, but for 2017, 18, and 19, we sat the most nurses for the Board of Nursing exam. And those students did not qualify for the tuition equalization grant because we came in the state after 2011, and so we were not grandfathered in within this bill. So what we're asking with House Bill 291 is to be able to afford those students that same opportunity that is already permitted to other students within the state. We're not trying to take students away from state facilities, from state schools, but we would like to be able to build the nursing workforce with less debt for those students that choose to come to our school. Our pass rate for 2020, we sat 319 nurses in the state last year, according to the Board of Nursing, and we have a 90.91% pass rate, first-time pass rate. And thank you, I'm very proud of that pass rate. And we're not only changing the lives of our patients, but we're changing the lives of our students as well. So what this bill will do is to help those students to be able to afford to go to school and become nurses, because that is the biggest barrier. And we have non-traditional nursing students. So we do not have 18-year-olds living at home with their mom and dad. We have 25, 35-year-old single parent of 3. We've had students living in their cars trying to better their lives. So this bill would help to afford them that opportunity and, again, to build our workforce within the state. So I appreciate your consideration.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions.
Senator Orrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We were just discussing in the Health and Human Services Committee the extreme shortage, which our chairman, Huffstetler, supported. He works in the Rome Hospital as a physician's assistant, but that the advanced practice nurses tend to have a challenge finding work, but it's the vacancies that cannot be filled are in registered nurses,
Yeah.
and how important it is to step up the ability of our educational institutions to provide that workforce. And you may not know the answer, but maybe the chair lady does, but the tuition equalization grant, how much is that at this point in time? Is it $4,000, or I know it's changed over the years.
So it's broken out per quarter and per semester. So it's $317 per quarter, $475 per semester, 4 quarters for 3 semesters per year. So,
So it's pretty modest.
it adds up. It helps. It won't probably be the deciding factor for someone to go to school, but it certainly helps, and these other schools have it. So it is to be sort of in parity
Sure,
with them, I would say.
Yeah, I think it has a great merit.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any
and
further
any little
questions?
bit does help the students. I mean, even if it's just enough to, gas and food.
Program or programs.
It's money they wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay, so, yeah,
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry to run you around.
Okay. I'm good?
Thank you,
All right.
ma'am.
Thank you,
The
appreciate it.
next bill is House Bill 606, Representative Nix of the 69. It's on 7, or
It's got 7 there, but hers has 7 on it, so I'm not sure what
you're
number
on
I am.
7, I think. Go ahead.
You want me to move over? Thank you.
But I think both of those mics are hooked together, so I think
All right.
either one of them will work.
Is this one working?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll use this one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. After going through some complicated bills, hopefully this one will be easy. This is that simple little bill everybody's always looking for. All this bill will do is add the Georgia Independent School Association to the list of accrediting agencies for Georgia schools. Of course, this is important because they have to have official recognition for their students to be able to qualify for HOPE, for special needs scholarships and other programs. The line that's added is line 17, the Georgia Independent Schools Association. And I'll give you just a little bit of quick background on this. In July the 1st of 2020, the Georgia Independent School Association began offering full accreditation services for all independent schools across Georgia through a partnership with Cognia, who is the global accreditation leader and corporate successor to SACS and Advanced Ed. And in doing this, the GISA joined the other southeastern states of Florida, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Alabama with this same type of partnership to do this and be able to offer those services. The only question I had when they asked me about this bill was exactly who was Cognia, and I did some research on that. Cognia is generally considered the gold standard for regional accreditation, even internationally. They're an extremely high-quality partner, and I think we can have great confidence in their abilities when they do their accreditation. So simply to add the Georgia Independent School Association to the list of accrediting agencies.
Do we have any questions for Representative Nix? Hearing none, I think we have one speaker.
You had a couple of folks, they may wish to speak. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Jackson. I'm president of Georgia Independent School Association. Thank you all for hearing this today. We're just here to answer any questions that you might have. We're very pleased to represent 160 schools already across the state. We have all kinds of schools, from special needs schools to have Jewish schools, Muslim schools, you name it, part of our association. And we're just here to answer your questions, if you have any at all.
Do you have any questions? There does not appear to be any. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Nix. Any further business to come before the committee? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. I thank you for your participation. If anyone in the audience has a comment on any of these bills, please reach out to me prior to the next meeting.